it's live now.
Oh.
But no, just streaming. With the
Oh,
back,
with the starting soon.
right, but I think it's still. I think it picked up our voices. Oops. The only thing I have if you're selecting is once your relationship grows, then we can probably help you out. But I got to take care of the family resident taking care of me first. Is the student photo. Selecting on selected. We will host a small store, like usually what we sell it, much too big. So I just got to make sure the family is actually getting it because it's not like it's coming up really easy. Yeah. I can have pretty creative options designed. But I mean, if you want to learn to play with your son, that's great. You have.
Oh no, we have tons of fun.
Right.
He was looking There's you have some like people.
Okay.
That's what I was saying.
Gotcha. So I noticed that on the list, there is pictures.
Okay.
We have stuff coming out for people like community, so I just have to check with them, where they're at. And then usually that within 5
Okay. You want to get your own
Okay.
because I got two pieces of pictures. Yeah.
Alright.
I get enough to like.
Oh, you ready to
Yeah. So he's on the bus.
And I'm the last one.
You're the last one up.
I appreciate it, man.
There's two of you on the list, but I checked I know there's like
So where did you put on your boxes?
the company.
Oh.
He sent me that.
Okay. You paid more than fair then, I think.
I got them for $90.
Okay.
I know a lot of places want them, so I'll just ask them.
Great.
Because I don't want to pay like something
Yep.
for something else.
Great. I hear you. Yeah, no, we can be easy. I think mine was 95. So.
Yeah, I got lucky though, cause I don't.
Doesn't help the local economy though, man.
Yeah, I know, but I still want to tell you, like, I know, like, the campus passes, like, booster boxes, or
Not
not
what I charge.
booster boxes, passes.
Not what I charge.
So, I was able to, my friend had a talk with
Okay.
give him passes and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, those all that stuff for some reason I do have to get this where it goes.
Yep, I was just about to say we're at.
Yep. She just got I'm not seeing anything yet. Okay.
I see two.
Anything I can help you out with?
No, I just trying to see if I can find this really quick.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I appreciate you stopping, but if you give me first dibs next time, again, eBay does not support the local economy. So for $5 more, and then you're guaranteed to have it on the resale. Plus bonuses, I give out, like, especially for the family, I give out so much extra stuff, dice, promos, and stuff like that you don't get on online. So our goal is to get people off the internet and support local. Let me grab that. You have a great day, sir. This is Anthony. We do. I'm with someone right now. I don't have one right here. You're welcome. You bet. Bye. Okay,
It was picking us up. Something live.
Call me. Let's see. Oh, I better know what's going on.
We've got 2 in the chat.
There we go.
3. We've got 3 people watching. Who's on number 4?
It's on. Okay, there we go. Oh, I'm having people log in through via phones right now. Okay. So let's go.
I gotta catch up.
Right? SmittyCon. I can't see you, but hopefully you can see us. So welcome. I heard some of you already started painting, so we won't hold up any longer. And I'll introduce you to Margaret Swick, who will be going through the painting, because certainly not me. But before I forget, let's see if I can put both of us on. Oh, okay, Margaret, you're on. So Margaret will be doing the painting, and when you get a second, if you want to check out her work on the Road to Tiamat on Facebook and Instagram, you can see some of the other work she's been doing. Or if you want to commission and get her to do some of the awesome painting job for you, you can do that too. But again, I don't want to hold you up. Margaret is on. She'll introduce you to the mini, and you guys can start painting.
Hi guys. Real quick, we'll just do a quick walkthrough of my setup. So we should all have our undead lizard folk, who is very appropriate for today, I think. I'm going to help you guys get started on him by covering how to paint dirty leather on his shield and how I approach bone. That's what we'll cover today in our hour. So I've already poured my colors for the leather to save on time for myself, but we're going to start with our ruddy leather. Make sure you give the bottle a good shake, and we're just going to use it straight out of the bottle. I have a well palette set up, however your painting is fine. If you see me looking off to the side slightly, that's just because I'm taking a quick look at chat. So I am paying attention to chat, so feel free to use it to ask questions. So we're going to just start with a quick base coat of our ruddy leather on the lower part of the shield. The whole inside of it is leather. And it's okay if you get messy. I'm painting a little quick, so I'm kind of getting it all over the place. So we'll get this down. And what the technique that we're going to be covering today is called layering. Layering isn't just for display pieces. You can also do it very quickly for tabletop as well, to get just as good results as dry brushing, if not slightly better. And if I use a term that you're not familiar with, please let me know. I am happy to explain it. So I've got my base coat down, and I'll give it a minute or two to dry. The nice thing with Reaper paint is that it does dry quickly. To help mine out, I'm just going to take a bigger brush and just kind of brush it along the surface to get the extra paint off. So then our next thing that we're going to do is called lining. Lining is taking a near black color, whether it's brown, blue, or gray, and literally just tracing the edges around the painted area. My paint's a little wet, so I'm just going to give it another half a moment. If anybody has any questions so far, this is a good time. Waiting for paint to dry. It's the most exciting part of mini painting. Yeah, that's probably good enough. Alright, so our next color that we're going to be using is walnut brown. Now I've taken 4 drops of this walnut brown and added a single drop of water into my well. It is this darker color right here. I'm going to take a smaller brush, and with just the tip of it, I'm going to trace around, without taking all the paint off, I'm going to just trace around the edging of this. And it's alright if you get a big line like that. The idea is to keep it a little small, but we can fix that up with our base coat. So we'll go around all of these like little metal pieces. And what lining does is it helps to sharpen the details on the miniature, because these are 28mm scale, so they're very small, and what this does is it helps give a dark defined line in between details. I forgot to put my glasses on, so bear with me if I look a little crazed because my eyes are wide open. So you see we're getting some nice thin lines. And it could be a little bit tedious, but it is well worth it in the long run when your mini's on the table and you can see all of their pouches and all of the different plates in their armor, just because you took the minute and a half to line them. Got one more. I'm gonna have to put my glasses on. I thought I could do it without them. Alright, so we'll let that dry for a moment. So you can see here, while I get my glasses on, that's what we have so far on our miniature. So, I got to do a little bit of cleanup because that top corner got a little bit too big of a line. So I'm just going to take my base coat of Ready Leather and I'm going to go right back up in there and just make a line just to thin out that dark line a little bit. And that's all you've got to do to clean it up. It's really easy to clean up your lining with your base coat. So our next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our chestnut gold and we're going to take 4 drops. I did 4 drops of the paint and then 2 drops of the water. And then I don't know what kind of brushes you guys are using, but if you've got any beat up brushes that kind of look like this, where they're all splayed out, that's ideal. If you don't, a regular new kind of hobby brush will work just as fine. We're going to take our paint. I'm going to just remix it because I can see it fell out. And when I say drops of water, if you've got a dropper bottle, that's great. If not, you can literally just take your brush, dip it into your paint water, and then mix it into the paint, and that will work out great. What we're doing there is just thinning down our paint a little bit so it's not all globby all over the mini. And then it kind of blends in with everything. So I'm foregoing my stippling brush because I don't know if you guys have any. And what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of dab our paint along the surface of our leather. Kind of like so. Just real easy. All I did was that I took my brush and I just went up and down very quickly as I moved it along that surface. And then we'll give that a moment to dry, and then we're going to actually move back to our walnut brown once that dries. And now we're going to pick out all of these deep gashes that are in the shield. So we've got one, and you can see them. There's 3 or maybe 4 of them. We're going to just take our walnut brown and we're just going to fill in that scratch with the paint. Just like that. Give it some depth. Sorry if I'm getting in my camera, I can't see. Nope, that's not one. So I only see 3, you might see 4. Then we'll make sure our yellow dry. Mine's dry. And so our next thing we're going to do is in our base mix, if you're using Wells or just pour more Ready Leather, we're going to actually take a drop of the walnut brown and add it to our base coat color. And then I'm going to use 3 drops of water. Mix it up. And what this is going to do, it's going to just darken our base coat color. We're going to just use that to do a tiny bit of shading to really make this look like a curved surface on the shield. So what I'm going to do is just kind of along the edge down here, down on the bottom, and I'm just going to pull. So I'm starting up higher and I'm pulling back towards me. And what that does is that kind of helps create a blended surface, because wherever your brush stops, that's where the most paint is going to actually be. So I'm going to pull back towards me so that the most amount of paint is going to be in the darkest part of the shield. And then I'm going to do just a little bit on the top. And I'm going to do that same thing, except this time now I'm brushing away from myself. Just like that. And then what this does is that now it looks like there's a curve in the shield, which is kind of how it's sculpted. It's sculpted a little bit odd. The back of it is kind of flat, but the top of it's actually concave. So, and then what we're going to do, so this would probably be where you would stop, but we're going to do 2 more steps. Because he is undead, we're going to add a little bit of mold to his shield, give him some moldy leather, so that it doesn't look just like old leather. It looks like it's been underground. So, we're going to do the same technique with meadow green. I did 4 drops of meadow green and 2 drops of water in my well, and I'm going to dip my brush in, and just like how we did with the yellow, I'm going to stipple the color again, but just not nearly as much, so just very kind of like conservatively. Let's get it in a couple of spots. So that's what we have so far. Maybe this camera. Sorry, I'm looking on my monitor to see if we can see it. So you can see that we kind of have this brighter stripe going down the center with our green acting like mold. And then our edges are dark to kind of help give it that look of being curved. And then our last step is called glazing. Glazing kind of helps hide your layers, essentially. It's very thin paint, almost like dirty paint water. And what it does is when you put it down over the surface, is it just kind of ties everything back together. So you usually do it with your base coat color. So ours was ruddy leather. So I'm going to take 4 drops. I'm going to do 4 drops of paint. And then however you guys are painting, so if you're painting on a paper plate or a paper towel, you can just keep adding water on top of that surface, and you just basically want it to be very thin. I'll show you the consistency that we're going for. But I'm going to add 8 drops of water to this well.
I know you're running all over the place. Alright, but I'm assuming it's going through okay now?
And I'm going to mix it up. And basically, what you can do to check this consistency is take your paintbrush with a little bit of the glaze, and on your nail, you can paint it here. So what you're looking for is to make sure that you can see the color, which, because this is a reddish color, it's a little hard to see on the nail on camera. But you want to be able to still see the white of your nail and that line underneath. You don't want it to be obscured. That's how you know that you have the right paint consistency. And then what we'll do is we'll take, not too much, not like you're doing a wash, but we'll take enough and we'll just hit everything that we've just painted with it. And the trick is to not flood the area. Anything that starts to pool, you want to wick it up pretty quickly. You don't want it to dry pooled up like you would a wash, because the paint is essentially broken in its base, which means that it's going to leave really weird splotches if you let it pool unevenly. And that's the finishing step for the shield. So what we did for our shield, just to recap it, and this is for dirty leather in general, is we base coated it in ruddy leather, and then we used our walnut brown with a drop of water mixed into it to do all of the lining and get our cracks. Then we used our chestnut gold and 2 drops of water, and then we use the stippling motion to kind of mix that yellow in with the red of our base color. And then we used meadow green with 2 drops of water to kind of do the same effect, but in a doing less coverage with it. And then we glazed all of it back over with our ruddy leather. And that's a good formula for any kind of leather. Now, if you want to dial it back, don't do the meadow green, because I only did that to make it look moldy. So, next we'll move on to our bone. I'm going to cover the skull of it, and if we still have time after we do the skull, we'll move on to the ribs. So, we're going to start off with a dark base coat, and the colors that we'll need for this part are desert sand and desert stone and our walnut brown. That's what I use for most of my bone work, and they're not even advertised as bone colors, which is the funny part. So what we're going to do, we're going to mix our first coat right out of the bag. We're going to take our desert stone, we're going to do 4 drops of that, and 2 drops of walnut brown. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And you want to start dark with bone, because you actually it's easier to work up to a lighter color rather than start with a mid coat. So all we'll really be doing is highlighting, unless we need to touch up something. I'm going to just add a drop of water. And it's going to be pretty dark, and by pretty dark I mean it's going to be like a very dark brownish gray, and that's fine. There we go. So, for his skull, we're going to just base coat it in this color that we just mixed of 4 desert stone, 2 walnut brown, and we're just going to get everything on his skull.
We both can if you want. Because I'll just recap it.
So we'll get everything. We'll get the eyes with this. I'm just going to get the horns with walnut brown.
I'll show them what the paint kit looks like.
Don't forget, he's got a back of the head too. As you're laying your base coat down. And we'll just, I'm not going to focus on underneath his chin, but we want to just make sure that our base coat starts to extend under there. You would do all of his bone in this color.
You're doing great for timing. It's only 12:30.
Oh, nice. Alright. So, next what we're going to do is we're going to take our desert stone, and we're essentially going to mix this again, but with only 1 drop. We'll see if this works. If not, we'll just skip straight up to desert stone. But nothing ventured, nothing gained. I'm going to just add a drop of water again. Need a better brush to mix with. There we go. So with bone, it's all about working up. So you'll see there's not a whole lot of difference between this color and our base coat, but that's okay. We're going to just kind of repaint over most of what we just did with this color, leaving only the darkest recesses alone. So we'll get the top of his head. We'll get along his brow. We're going to skip his eyes. Those are considered to be a dark recess. We'll get his cheek. It's not going to look a whole lot of different at first, but it will later. Get his teeth.
Okay.
Back of the head. We're going to skip underneath his chin. So now we're going to graduate straight up to desert stone with no walnut mixed in. And this is where it'll all start to look like bone.
While you're doing that, I'm going to do this at the same time. I'm going to get both screens on here. Hey folks, while you're still painting, I just want to make sure, if you haven't heard already, that I'm going to give this away today. So the judges that's doing the costume contest will also judge your mini. So the minis that you're working on with Margaret right now, sometime after, I think like probably 4:30 or so today, you're going to bring them up to the judges that's doing the costume contest, and the winner will take this home. So I know some of you are coming down tomorrow, so it'll be back there tomorrow. It has paint, has the org zombie, and was it 1 or 2 brushes in there?
2 brushes.
2 brushes in there, a little water pot. So it's pretty nice prize for sure. So now I bet everybody's more focused on their mini right now. So I'll get back to Margaret's painting.
So what I did is I took our 4 drops of desert stone and I added water, a drop of water to them. And we're kind of essentially doing the same thing, but now we're starting to be more mindful of our recesses. So I didn't go as deep into the cheek right here or into the forehead right here with the color, leaving a little bit of that dark undercoat behind to really emphasize the shadow. And you're going to want to pick out his teeth, but if your teeth end up being just the bone color, that's okay too. They're a little hard to pick out. You might even have to do 2 coats of it in some places, but you're going to start to notice the drastic change that we're starting to get almost right away. So you can see his side of the face here compared to his side of the face there. It's starting to really come together as bone. And we're going to keep doing that technique where we're pulling our paint to where we want it the most. Because at the end of our brush stroke is where the most amount of paint will be. And then with that contest, I'm just getting you guys started. He's mostly bone and leather, but it's up to you guys to finish him off and to make it your own rather than just copying everything I'm doing. So I'm leaving you his armor and his tunic. Don't forget his teeth, because I almost did. And then I'm going to pick out the highest spots again with a second coat, just to really push that color through. Get this part of his jaw underneath. Alright. So now we're starting to get somewhere with the skull. It's starting to look like dark bone. So our next color, we're going to be using the straight up desert sand. Not the desert stone, but the desert sand now. It's a lighter color. And this will be our last layer on the bone. And then I'm going to add a drop of water to it. Give it a quick stir. And now we're going to just get the highest highlights. So I'm going to do the edge of his cheekbone, all of the raised parts on his face. It's like all of these brow ridges and his cheekbones. Get his teeth as best as you can. The nose. Top of the head. You can even kind of come down here. I have a mold slip right here. There's a hole that shouldn't be there, but I'm going to use it as a hole in the skull. So I'm going to leave it shaded. And then the back of the head, I'm just going to get kind of like the edge. Do it on both sides. Come down the center of his nose. Top of the lip. Get his teeth. And that eye. And I'm going to just get underneath the jaw, where the jawbone is, on both sides. And then what we're going to do, we're going to go back to our desert stone mix, and that's actually going to be our glaze this time, rather than our base coat. So I've already added 2 drops, so 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So remember, we want it to be the consistency of dirty paint water. And at this point, if you want to, you could take your meadow green, just like how we did with our leather, and make it moldy in a way. So I'm not gonna do that, just because I kind of like my bone, because like I feel like his bone, it would be kind of more exposed. So with our glaze, and this paint scheme is for like old bone, because as bone ages it turns almost black and brown. So that's why we started with such a dark base coat. If you wanted to do newer bone, you would start with the 1 drop of walnut mix and work up from there. And I would even add some white to the paint as well to help really lighten it up. But you'll see once you have your glaze, a lot of that harsh darkness really lightens up because we're using a lighter color than our base coat. And your end result is actually something that looks and resembles bone. So, we still have plenty of time, so we'll do some more bone work in other spots. Or I can go on to do some metal since you guys have that color. Since everything got sent up to you guys. Oh, I said I was going to do his horns. His horns I'm just going to do straight up walnut brown. I just took it from the leather mix. My original one, I didn't even highlight the horns. They're so small. I just put the walnut brown on them. For whatever reason, whenever I do dragons or lizard folks, their horns, they're always black. I think it's just because I watch too much Game of Thrones, and in that world, dragon bone is black. So, I'll move on to show just like regular bone. And what we'll do, we'll use just about the same setup. We'll have to re-pour the desert stone because now it's a glaze, but that's okay. So we'll take our first base coat again, and I'll show you guys on his chest right here. So it's a little bit different than the skull because it's a different kind of area. So we'll base coat that in our 4 desert stone, 2 walnut brown mixture, being mindful of his tunic that is hanging down beneath it or onto it. And we can kind of go down into the spine a little bit. Make sure you get underneath. You don't want it to be that clean gray or white on your undead guy. We'll give that a moment to dry. Waiting for paint to dry. And then we'll take, I'm just going to give it a stir. So if you're using a well palette, you're going to want to just to re-stir the next paint just to knock it back in to solution because it'll start to fall out. And just like with the skull, we're going to get almost everything with this color. So this was our 4 desert stone, 1 walnut brown. And it's okay if this gets into the recesses, but we do want to keep most of them quite dark. So aim to just get the ribs with this color as best as you can. And then I'm going to get the spine. And I'm also going to get any area underneath that I can see. And give that a moment to dry. And then we're going to have to re-pour our desert stone if you're using a well palette. One, 2, 3, 4. Nice drop of water. Quick stirring. And then what we're going to do with this color is we're going to really start to just pick out the raised bones. So that being the ribs, we're going to pull to the center with our paint. We might have to do 2 coats of it, just to kind of combat the very dark base coat underneath. Make sure you get the breastplate. And the same thing on the other side. You'll notice that I don't go all the way to the end of the bone, and that's just because I'm also doing this to create shading on the actual bones itself. And I'm going to get this little bit of the spine that I base coated, and just about anything else I can see underneath. So give that half a second. Reaper paint tends to dry pretty quickly, which is why you actually have to add drying retardant to it if you're going to wet blend with it, just because of how quickly it'll dry. And then, so this is our 4 desert sand, 1 drop of water. I'm going to start about 3/4 of the way up with it, keeping kind of like this part darker, just to give it some transition. We'll get the center of the breastplate bones, or the sternum. I guess that's really the sternum. I don't know. You know, I'm running into the same problem I always have, where there's one part of a mini that I don't actually know the anatomy of, and I guess it's going to be lizard folk bone anatomy. So doing the same thing where I'm just starting about 3/4 of the way up if I have the full rib exposed. Sorry if you heard my phone, it just vibrated. Gonna get a little bit of the spine right there, just a little dot, really. And then we're going to do the same thing again where we glaze with our desert stone. Just give it a quick stir though before you do that, because it will have definitely fallen out of its solution. And when I say that it falls out of solution, I mean that the pigment has separated from the base in the water, so it's just kind of all sitting at the bottom. Then we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to just go over everything we just painted. Nice and quickly, and then we're going to rinse our brush off. And we're going to just take it and we're going to drag it through the recesses to wick up all of the paint water that just went in there. So we don't really want our glaze to pool there, and that's where it's going to want to. So that'll just help clean it up a little bit. And then you've got your chest painted. And that's how you would do his tail as well, and then his other bones, so his arms, his neck, and his legs, you would paint in the same fashion, where you want to leave those deep recesses very dark and really focus on the more raised bone. So since we still have just under 20 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do his sword. Since you guys have all of that color, I just need to find my piece of paper, because I wasn't planning on doing that. There it is. There it is. So, for the metal, and this would be all the metal that's on the miniature itself, we're going to be using stone gray and tempest gray, which you guys should have. If you guys don't have it, please let me know and we'll work on something else. So we'll be using those guys. Oh, I should recap the bone. Sorry, live television. So for our bone, It was real simple. What we did was we base coated in 4 drops of desert stone and 2 drops of walnut brown. And then our next layer on the bone was 4 drops of desert stone, 1 drop of walnut brown. Then we did straight up desert stone. And then we finished it with desert sand. And then we did our glaze in the desert stone to kind of help lighten everything back up. Alright, now that I totally remembered to do that the first time, we will be using Tempest Gray and Stone Gray. So we'll start off with our, shake out the wrong one, with our Stone Gray. And I'm just going to do 1/2 of the sword. So it just kind of poured out. So we'll take some Stone Gray and we'll base coat our sword in it. And this isn't, we're not going to do the sword as shiny metal. We're going to do the sword as a dirty, rusty piece of metal that came out of the ground. So we'll take our Stone Gray, which is almost the same color as the miniature itself, and we'll just get a nice base coat on. Since I have to wait for the front to dry, I'm just going to base coat the whole thing. Don't forget this part. And then what we'll do, once that dries, we're actually going to do a glaze in the beginning. So we have this walnut brown mixture from our shield. I'm just going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more drops of water to it. So we're going to make it glaze consistency. So we want it to be really thin. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put that thin coat of paint over the whole sword. It's really important to make sure that it's dry, because if you try to introduce a paint that's as thin as this glaze, it's just going to wash your base coat off. So we need to give it a chance to really dry. I'm just checking. Yeah, alright, mine's there. So I'm going to take some of the glaze and we're going to put it up, we're going to push the paint up towards the top. Just a nice, thin, even layer, if you can manage it, just to darken the whole thing down a touch. So that, oh god, the back, I'm not going to try to do the back of my sword, it's soaking wet still. So that's kind of our starting color for our sword. Next, what we'll do is we're going to take our Tempest Gray, which is kind of a bluish gray. We still had 20 minutes, so I'm going to do the sword too.
Oh, sweet.
Pour it out. I'm going to add a drop of water and a little bit more paint, because mine was just kind of pouring out rather than doing drops. And what we're just going to do with this is we're going to just pick out the edge of the sword. So this is what's left of our clean metal. This is a very nice metal color. And so we're going to get the sharp edge. And just kind of like the top. And maybe if you want, you could kind of like splotch it in random places. So that's just a real quick step. And then this is all for his medals. So you'll see he's got not greaves. Well, more unpreparedness. So next what we're going to do, we're going to want to start to build up rust. And the rust colors we're going to use are our ruddy leather, our meadow green, and our chestnut gold. So first we're going to start with ruddy leather. So basically we're going to be working in a way where we use the next color less. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4 drops of ruddy leather, 2 drops of water to thin it out, and we'll be doing our stippling technique with our brush again to just kind of dot the color on there. I'm going to use a smaller brush. So we really want it down at the bottom. Kind of drag it up a little bit random. My paint could have done with being a little bit thinner looking at it. So you don't really want to see such heavy spots, but that's okay because we're going to go over it with more colors. So our next color is going to be the chestnut gold.
Looking good.
I'll add 2 drops of water to it. And we're going to be doing less than we were with the ruddy leather. And we kind of want to do this on top of the spots where our first color is. So I'm going to just kind of dab it along at the bottom. And then in the clusters, I'll do like 1 or 2 little spots. And then our last one, the meadow green. 1, 2, uh-oh. Uh-oh. Got a clog. That's fine, I got 2 drops out. So I would normally do 4 drops, 2 drops of water, but I could only get 2 drops out of the paint bottle. And then same thing, we're going to do this even less than we were just doing our yellow. And then for our glaze, we're actually going to take our base coat of the stone gray and add a drop of walnut brown to it. And then I'm going to do my normal 8 drops of water. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Give it a good mix. I need a better brush. There we go. And again, you want to check that consistency to make sure you can still see the white of your nail through it, which I can. And then we'll glaze right on over everything we did, and it's going to look pretty dark at first. Your glaze will always dry lighter than it goes down, so don't panic when you first see that. If you're really worried, you can take another brush and just kind of push the paint around a little bit to kind of like clean it up in some areas. And it could have been also that I didn't have enough stone gray because I was just mixing on top of what I had in my well. So your results might vary. I would have done 4 drops of stone gray, 1 drop of the walnut brown. Yeah, I didn't have enough stone gray in mine, which in that case, the fix would be our Tempest gray. So I have 1 drop in there already, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. To kind of bring back the color a little bit. And this is a live, I've messed up, so I'm gonna figure out how to fix it kind of situation. Oh yeah. So that lightened it up a little bit again. And if you want, once you've done your glaze, you can go ahead and you can take your Tempest Gray and pick back out the edge if you want, or take the Walnut Brown and stick it in the recesses. So this isn't our Walnut Brown, but it's close. Just like that. Just to make it a little bit darker. And that's how I would tackle these. I would definitely make sure though that I lightened up the glaze color with more stone gray if it was too dark. That was my mistake because I was rushing it. But there's our guy. And that actually covers all of the paint in the kit. So what you guys will have left to do is the back of his shield and the metal trimming on it, his leather armor, and then his metal armor, his tunic, he's got a little knife right here, and the rest of his bone work, and then his base. But that should be enough to get you guys started on the right track of how I would tackle different parts of him that tend to be a little bit tricky for painters.
All set?
Yeah, I mean, we've got 6 minutes. I don't know what else I can start.
Right?
And finish.
Well, let's see. You want to show them your...
Oh, I can show them the finished one.
Yeah.
So I've already painted him for the store, so I have a finished version of him that used all of the same colors that you guys have, so maybe it'll help inspire.
Tell them what you did.
Yeah, help inspire you guys. So here's the finished one. You can see that the bone is almost identical to ours. Obviously, when you sit down and paint the same mini, your results are going to vary a little bit. So what I did for his tunic was I based it in the chestnut gold, and then I actually used desert sand to highlight it on all of the little ridges that are on it, just to make it pop. And then I did that lining like we were talking about, so I did it all around where his tunic hangs on the bone. I did all the same leather technique for his shoulder pads, and then I just kind of skipped it a little bit on the ones underneath, but the two on top got the same treatment as the shield. And then his boots are done the same way as his sword. You can see comparatively that the sword on the finished one is lighter than the one on the demonstration, but actually not by much. And then I did that same trick with the metal for all of the metal trim on the shield and the armor as well. It was just, you know, you take the edge of your brush and you, rather than stippling all over the place, you just catch an edge every now and then. His base is the stone gray mixed, and then what I did was I took the meadow green and I stippled it kind of all over the place with some chestnut gold, and then I did a glaze of the walnut brown, and then I did another glaze of the stone. So that's how I tackled him for when I painted him.
Cool.
Are there any questions?
I think they're all on their phones. Painting is what she was saying. Okay. Well, I guess we're all set, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, hello again. I'll take this so you can hopefully hear me a little bit better. So, can't wait to see your finished product. If you painted and coming down tomorrow, bring it with you. Then I can take pictures of it in our shadow box that we have. Again, please don't forget, winner, if you get your stuff entered in the contest, is going to win this, I guess I should say ogre instead of org. I don't know why I keep saying that. ogre zombie will be yours, and it'll be going back to you with you guys tomorrow. So hopefully you had some fun. Again, can't wait to see the finished product, and enjoy the rest of the con. Thank you.